My sports supporters, well, we survived. We survived this game against a terrible Chicago Sky team that Stephanie White managed to allow to go to overtime. I got to tell you, I was getting a little nervous about double overtime there for a while, but nonetheless.
19 points. That was the lead. Against a team sitting at 4-9, one of the worst records in the league. And the Indiana Fever still needed overtime to put them away. So before anyone hands out a trophy for this win, let's talk about how a game this lopsided ever got that close.
Caitlin Clark had a gargantuan game, and I put her on triple-double alert early in the game, but Stephanie White took her out for a while in the second quarter and let her come back in. Finally, 32 points, 8 of 18, 15 of 15 from the line, 7 rebounds.
Start with the obvious. Caitlin Clark was sensational. 32 points, 15 for 15 from the free throw line, 7 rebounds, and the kind of all-around floor game that had people whispering triple-double before halftime. Here's the problem with a night like that. When your best player goes off, and the result is still a one-possession dogfight against the bottom of the standings, the issue isn't your best player.
34 points, 13 of 26, 12 rebounds for Aliyah Boston. And as good as that line looks, there were a couple of times tonight where Aliyah Boston would sure enough have you scratching your head. You're like, what are you doing? I got to tell you.
Then there's Aliyah Boston. On paper, a monster line, 34 points, 12 rebounds, a double-double that looks fantastic in the box score. But the box score doesn't tell you about the stretches where you're watching her and asking what the plan was. That's the frustrating thing about evaluating Boston right now. The production is elite, the consistency, possession to possession, isn't there yet, and in a tight game, those lapses cost you.
Kelsey Mitchell. At times, Kelsey looked real bad in this game. Real bad. 7 of 17, 19 points, 3 assists. She actually had a couple of really sweet assists, but there was some times where she took some nonsensical shots that just had you shaking your head. It was like, why would you even consider shooting that? But we know.
And this is where shot selection bites you. Kelsey Mitchell had a rough shooting night, and it wasn't just the misses, it was the choices. There were trips down the floor where the ball found a good look and instead went up as a contested, early, low-percentage attempt. 1 or 2 of those in a blowout, nobody notices. String them together while your lead is shrinking, and you're handing momentum back to a team that has no business being in the game. Empty possessions are how comebacks start.
Nasty work that this team, this Sky team, took the Fever to overtime. This Sky team's not very good, folks. They're now 4-9 after tonight. The Fever are 7-5. Barely. Barely. Right here, let's look at the second and third quarters. The Sky dropped 26, and then in the third, 39.
So how does a 19-point cushion actually disappear? Look at the quarters. Chicago put up 26 in one frame, and then 39 in the next. 39 points allowed in a single quarter to the 4-9 team. That's not a cold shooting night for your offense. That's a defense that stopped getting stops at the exact moment a struggling opponent found its rhythm. A lead like that doesn't evaporate by accident. It evaporates when the team protecting it quits doing the things that built it.
On the Fever, and look, Sydney Taylor went ballistic in the third quarter. At one point, she had 25 points in 11 minutes for the Sky. And she got them back in this game.
And the collapse had a face. One Chicago guard caught fire in the third and basically dragged her team back into the game almost by herself. A scoring burst in a tiny window that flipped the whole complexion of the night. When one player does that to you, it's fair to ask where the adjustment was. Where's the double team, the trap, the body that says you are not beating us by yourself. You let a hot hand stay hot, and a comfortable night turns into a survival test.
But the defensive guru allowed the Chicago Sky to score 106 points tonight. Again? What? I can't praise that. I'm not going to praise that.
Which brings us to the reputation. Stephanie White arrived in Indiana with a defensive identity, the coach who was supposed to button this up. So how do we square that with letting Chicago hang 106 points on the board? You can love the win and still refuse to praise that number. 106 against that offense is not a strong defensive night. It just isn't. And pretending otherwise does this team no favors.
And they went up and down the court at times, especially in the first quarter. They decided to go and just run up and down the court. And then something happens where Stephanie White cannot stand to watch that brand of basketball. And she's got to slow it down into this bogged down, slugfest, half court, extra pass horseshit. And teams really have figured that out, and they're getting back in these games.
But here's the part worth actually sitting with, because it's bigger than one game. There's a real tension building inside this Fever team, and it's about identity. Watch the first quarter and you can see it. Clark gets the ball, the pace picks up, the team flies up and down the floor, and in those stretches, Indiana looks dangerous, fast, loose, scoring in transition, playing to the strengths of the best young guard in the sport. Then something shifts, the tempo drops. The game slows into a grinding, half-court, pass-it-around-the-perimeter slog. That's a coaching choice. Stephanie White wants control, wants to dictate the pace, wants the game played on her terms. And there's a defensible argument for it. Discipline travels in the postseason. You can't live and die by chaos. But there's a cost, and you're watching it in real time. The cost is that opponents have figured something out. When the Fever slow it down, they let inferior teams hang around. A bad team can't keep up in a track meet, but give them a slow, methodical, possession-by-possession game, and suddenly the talent gap shrinks. You end up playing to your opponent's pace instead of your own. That's how a 4-9 team takes you to overtime. That's how this team keeps ending up in escape acts instead of comfortable wins. There's also a usage question buried in here. At one point, Clark sat for a stretch, and you could feel the offense lose its engine. The ball stopped moving the same way. The pace died. When your best creator is the thing that makes everyone else better, you have to be deliberate about when she rests and what the offense becomes without her. Get that wrong, and you hand a desperate team exactly the window it needs to climb back in. And it isn't all on the stars or the scheme. The Fever got real contributions on the glass tonight. Gritty rebounding, second-chance possessions, a couple of momentum plays from role players who never show up in the highlight package. That's the encouraging part. The talent and the depth are there. Which makes the near collapse even more maddening, because this isn't a team that lacks the pieces to put a bad opponent away. It's a team that keeps choosing not to. So which is it? Do you trust the system, slow it down, control the chaos, grind it out, and accept that some nights you'll survive instead of dominate? Or do you build the offense around what your best player actually does well, turn her loose, and play with the pace that makes this team genuinely scary? Because right now, it feels like the coach is coaching against her own roster's biggest strength, and the standings are starting to reflect it. 7-5, with a star playing at an all-WNBA level, should not feel this stressful. This win counts the same as a blowout in the standings. But the way you win tells you who you are. And a team that needs overtime to beat the bottom of the league has a problem it can't keep papering over with one transcendent guard. So tell me where you land. Is Stephanie White's grind-it-out approach the right plan for a Caitlin Clark team? Or is she coaching the talent right out of her own roster? Drop it in the comments. Tell me whether you think this group figures it out or keeps sweating out games it should be winning by 20. And if you want the honest breakdown nobody else is giving you, you know what to do.